This is part 2 of Eoin Colfer's chapter book, The Legend of Spud Murphy. In this section, we'll get through chapters 3 and 4. In chapters 1 and 2, we met the family with 2 boys who get sent to summer reading camp at the library, where there's a legendary librarian, Mrs. Murphy, whose nickname is Spud Murphy because the rumor is that she uses a powerful spud gun to punish boys who are misbehaving in the library. Chapter 3, The Test. On that first day on the carpet, Marty decided that we should test Spud. When Spud said there would be trouble if we stepped off the carpet, what exactly did she mean? Did trouble mean a strict talking to? Or did trouble mean being suspended by your fingernails over a pit of alligators? I need to know how much I can get away with, said Marty, tying his jumper round his neck like a bib. I don't need to know, I said, remembering the boy who had run past us in hysterics. I'll just sit here and pretend to read. You are such a chicken, said Marty. No wonder Action Man is your only friend. I, on the other hand, am an actual hero type. I am prepared to take risks. Why did you tie your jumper to your chest? Wait and see, chicken boy, said Marty. My big brother walked round the edge of the carpet, checking if Spud would spot him. She can't even see us, he said. We can do whatever we want. I was starting to get worried. Whenever a boy did something wrong, grown-ups tended to blame the entire family. What are you going to do? I asked. Marty smiled. The best way to mess with a librarian is to put things back in the wrong place. Ah! He rubbed his hands gleefully. They hate that. It drives them nuts. Marty was an expert on messing with librarians. There had been several notes home from the school library. So I'm just going to switch a few books for Mrs. Spud Murphy. By the time she finds out, we'll be home watching cartoons. Marty lay on his stomach and wiggled out onto the wooden floor. He glided across the polished planks on a double layer of wool. We had to admit it. Marty was the master. Like a crocodile swimming down the Nile, Marty slid to the nearest bookshelf with barely a sound. He climbed on to the bottom shelf and perched there, motionless. There was only one other person at this end of the library, a short man with gray hair and bushy eyebrows. Marty waited until he moved away before he began causing mischief. One book at a time, he switched almost every single book in the section. He put mysteries with romance, adventure with birdwatching, and gardening with model airplanes. Spud would be furious. To make matters worse, Marty intended swapping the reference sheets at the end of each shelf. These pages told the reader what kind of book was on that particular shelf. Marty reached up slowly and tore the sheet from the clip that held it. Suddenly, a shadow fell across my brother. It was a big, sharp shadow, and it belonged to a big, sharp person. I turned to look. It was Spud. She had appeared without a sound, like a ninja librarian. Spud stood, slippered feet apart, with her hands hovering over the book stamps on her belt. Marty hadn't seen her and was still holding the reference page. It was too late to warn him. There was nothing I could do. Spud's left hand moved with lightning speed, grabbing the book stamp and throwing it in one smooth, precise motion. It tumbled through the air so fast that it hissed. Marty turned just in time to see the block of wood and rubber heading in his direction. It was too late to move out of the way. All Marty could do was close his eyes and squeal like a kitten. The rubber stamp snagged the reference page in Marty's hand, plucking it from his fingers and stamping it against the shelf. The force of the throw was so strong that the page stayed there for several seconds after the stamp had fallen to the ground. 2 words were stamped on the page in purple ink. Damaged goods. "I knew it," said Spud slowly. "I can always tell a troublemaker. I took one look at you, Master Martin Woodman, and I knew you'd be off that carpet before I was back at my desk." "You set me up," said Marty, surprised. "That's right. I was waiting behind the shelf. The jumper trick was good, but I've tracked a lot sneakier than you in my day." Marty stood slowly. No sudden moves. I'm sorry, Mrs. Murphy. I'll never leave the carpet again." Spud slid across the floor on her slippers. "Too late for that. Since you're already off the carpet, you can fix the damage you've done." "But there are hundreds of books. I can't remember them all." Spud ran a finger along the shelf. "Each book has a number. This section starts at number 560. She plucked a book from the shelf. "Here it is. I've started you off. You get these in order by the time your mother comes to pick you up, and maybe I won't have to tell her how you set off the fire extinguishers." Marty's mouth flapped. But I didn't." Spud put her hands on her hips. "I know you didn't, and I'm sure your mother will believe that. Unless, of course, you've been in trouble before." Marty thought about it for a moment, then began rearranging books as fast as he could. He knew when he'd met his match. 2 hours and 14 paper cuts later, Marty was finished. He sat on the carpet, sucking his fingers. "That wasn't so bad," he said on the way to the exit. "I've had teachers meaner than her." Marty was actually getting cocky again. "Marty, don't you remember the rubber stamp? She nearly took your head off." "Yes, that was cool. She must practice for hours. Do you think she'll really say that I set off the fire extinguishers?" "I don't care," I said. "I just want to get out of here." Marty had started to wander over towards Spud. I couldn't believe it. Mum was outside, waiting in the car. I could see her through the swing doors. We were almost safe. And Marty was going over to the librarian's desk. Excuse me, Mrs. Murphy." Spud's head swiveled slowly like a tank gun. Her eyes landed on Marty. "Martin Woodman, back for more. I would have thought you'd keep well away from me." "Just one question, Mrs. Murphy. You wouldn't really say I set off the extinguishers, would you?" Spud smiled back at Marty. Her teeth looked like a row of icicles. "Oh, wouldn't I?" "I don't think so. Throwing a stamp is one thing. That was cool, by the way. You liked that, did you, Martin?" "Sure did." Spud opened the box on her desk. "I have a collection of stamps here. One came in last week you might like. It's in the shape of a pirate flag. A lot of the boys like me to stamp it on their forearms, like a temporary tattoo." She began to close the box. "But maybe you're too young." Marty was already rolling up his sleeve. "No, I'd love that. On my arm. Wait until the lads in the swimming pool see this." Spud selected a stamp, inking it on a blue pad. "Are you sure, Martin? This won't wash off for days." I'm sure. Stamp away." "Well, if you're sure." Spud's smile widened. "Okay, then. Keep still. The librarian rolled the rubber stamp across Marty's forearm, across and back 3 times. When she removed the stamp, we leaned in to examine the pirate ship. Only it wasn't a pirate ship. It was a short sentence of 3 words. The words were, I love Barbie. Oops, said Spud. Wrong stamp. Sorry about that. Marty couldn't speak. If someone saw those 3 words on his forearm, he'd be teased for all eternity. You boys had better hurry up, said Spud, placing the stamp back in the box. One more thing. Any more of your little games, and I get nasty. There are worse things in this desk than rubber stamps. We walked to the door. Marty held his arm in front of him as though it belonged to someone else. Spud called to him as he opened the door. Oh, Martin, she said, enjoy swimming. Chapter 4. A Good Book. For the next few visits, I sat on the carpet pretending to read. I sat there until I felt sure the pattern from that faded old carpet had transferred itself onto my bottom. Marty spent most of the time licking his forearm, but it was no use. The stamp didn't fade, and now he had a blue tongue, too. Sometimes Mum arrived early to take us home and would catch me pretending to read. Now there's a sight to make any mother smile, she said. I knew you would love reading if only you would give it a try. That was it. We were doomed. 3 afternoons a week, Mum decided, we would spend 2 hours in the library. So 3 times a week, we pretended to read quietly. Sometimes we forgot to be quiet, and then Spud would pay the children's section a visit. I remember the first time it happened. We were arguing over who owned the air in our bedroom. I said that Marty owned the air on his side of the room, but he said that he owned the air at ground level. This meant that I would have to climb on to the top bunk just to breathe. Suddenly, a familiar shadow fell across the carpet, making me shiver. Spud stood there, feet apart, belt weighted down with rubber stamps. Without saying a thing, she pulled out a large flashcard from her pocket. On the flashcard was written the word, shh. We got the message. We couldn't fight, we couldn't shout, we couldn't make loud bodily noises. All the things young boys live for. Oh, the boredom. My head felt like it would fall off and spin across the wooden floor. I tried everything to entertain myself. Watching movies in my head, following the pattern in my carpet prison, eating strips of paper from the books. But most of all, I just dreamed of freedom. Then one day, something strange happened. I was pretending to read a book called Finn McCool, the Giant of Ireland, when something caught my eye. It was the first sentence of the story. Finn McCool, it said, was the biggest giant in Ireland. There was something about that sentence. It was interesting. I decided to read a bit more. I wouldn't read the whole book, no way, but maybe just another couple of sentences. Finn had a problem, said the book. Angus MacTavish, the biggest giant in Scotland, wanted to fight him. Well, I couldn't stop now. 2 giants fighting? Maybe I'd just see how that turned out. And so I read to the end of the page, and then I kept right on reading. Before I knew it, I was lost in the tale of Finn McCool and Angus MacTavish. There was adventure and magic and battles and clever plans. Mountains exploded and wizards slew goblins. Magic goats talked and princesses turned into swans. It was another world. "Ready to go?" said a voice. I looked up. It was Mom. "What are you doing here?" I asked. There were shopping bags in Mom's hands. "What do you think I'm doing here? It's time to go." I hugged the book to my chest. "But we just got here. It's only—" I stopped talking because I had spotted the wall clock. It was 5 o'clock. I had been reading a book for almost 2 hours. I looked across at Marty. He was still reading, a book with a picture of a dragon on the cover. What was going on here? "Come on now, your dad will be waiting." To my complete amazement, I realized that I didn't want to leave my book behind. And neither did Marty. "But Mom—" "Yes, Marty, I've not finished my book." "Neither have I." Mom put down the shopping bags and gave us both a big hug, right out in public. It's a good thing our friends didn't hang out in libraries. "Do you think Mrs. Murphy would let us bring them home?" Mom picked up the bags. "Of course. You have your cards, don't you?" And that is the end of chapter 4. Eoin Colfer, who wrote this book, was born in the southeast part of Ireland in Wexford. He began writing at an early age. He began teaching after going to college in Dublin. And it was when he was teaching that he started writing books. His most famous book is Artemis Fowl, and his own favorite book is The Airman. Sometimes he travels and stays in southern France, near a town called Nice, but most of the time now he lives near Dublin. He has 2 children. This is the end of part 2. It contains chapters 3 and 4. It will be continued in the 3rd and final section of this chapter book, The Legend of Spud Murphy, written by Eoin Colfer, illustrated by Glenn McCoy.